Now learn the bass catching secrets of the Bassmaster Tournament Trail Pros coming next on the Bassmasters, right here on TNN Outdoors.
Chad's grown up with it. He's always wanted to do it, and he's got the definite competitiveness that it takes to do this.
Young Chad Brauer, who's never won a big tournament. He's been in there pitching and whining and cranking, and he's a young man, Denny Brauer's son. Got to be 9 pounds and 1 ounce. What's the scale? 16 pounds, 13 ounces! Oh! Woo!
How many of you Bassmasters, young and old, have ever dreamed about fishing the Bassmaster Tournament Trail? Well, today we're going to follow a young angler, Chad Brauer, that's living proof the dream can come true. Casting for cash, fishing for a living, has been Chad's longtime goal. The son of Super Pro Denny Brauer, Chad's grown up with a rod and reel and a desire to be a better bass fisherman. He's had a good teacher.
Yeah, it's like a little football. Weather's probably the most important thing to pay attention to. If the weather's real stable, you know that the fish should be active, and they might be hitting topwater baits and real easy to catch. If you had a cold front go through, they may have pulled back and be in the brush piles and be real hard to catch. You might have to use different techniques like the flipping technique or taking a jig and putting it right in the brush piles. So the weather's going to more or less tell you how you have to fish in order to catch those fish before you get there.
There he is.
Well, you hot dog, you got one?
Yeah.
Yeah, fall out of the boat.
Just
You
about
got good
pulled me
fish.
in.
You got it good.
He's diving down there.
Holy cow. He's all yours. You got to land him on your own.
I'll get him.
Yeah, you get him. That is a beauty. That's a good 3-pound fish.
Yeah?
Those go a long way in a tournament.
Boy, he nailed that spinnerbait.
That's part of the tournament. You know, you have to land those fish by yourself.
Yeah, without that new no
net. You got to learn to reach down and grab them like that, or either that or swing them aboard. Well, that's a pretty fish.
Yep.
Ate that spinnerbait. Come off of that heavy bush over there.
That was almost 10 years ago when Denny pointed out to Chad that bass move tight to cover in cold front conditions. Today, our Bassmasters cameras will be alongside an older and wiser Chad Brauer as he puts that fatherly advice to use. We're covering the Bassmaster Tennessee Top 100 at Old Hickory Lake at Hendersonville, Tennessee. Cold front conditions and a lake drawdown promise to make it tough fishing. You'll learn how the pros adjust. Stay with us. I'm Bob Cobb. The Bassmasters will be right back.
The Bassmaster Tennessee Top 100 Tournament. Old Hickory Lake, a new challenge on the $4 million Bassmaster Tournament Trail. The top 100 pros and amateur partners face an unexpected hurdle on this Cumberland River impoundment outside Nashville's country music capital. For sure, some of these pros are singing the country blues, just as mournful as that old tune, My Bucket's Got a Hole in It. But in this case, the lake sprang a leak. The water level dropped over 3 feet since the pre-tournament practice period. Mid-October is a scheduled drawdown time. The Corps of Engineers annually pulls the plug to provide an opportunity to conduct maintenance on private docks and public facilities. But it can be a real shocker to bass and tournament game plans. Old Hickory Lake is home base for Mike Valentine, a BASS touring pro angler from Mount Juliet, Tennessee. Normally, the shallow water grass pattern is a killer in the fall, but with the drawdown, the bass are scattered. Mike's fishing a new soft plastic weedless bait, the salad spoon, designed by Herb Reed, the innovator of the Sluggo lure.
That's what you call skiing them in the grass. I don't even know if he'll keep. There's the salad, and there's the salad spoon. Poor little guy. Didn't mean to jerk on you so hard.
Fishing a soft plastic frog over grass in the back of a creek is producing strikes for Paul Elias, too. But the largemouths aren't taking the bait. In this case, how do you adjust to catch the fish?
Well, the main thing you got to do is just wait and make sure they've got it. Make sure the frog has disappeared, and that's real hard to do. And I'm using the fire line, which has no stretch whatsoever, and it's got its good points and its bad points. If I react too quick, I can take it away from them a lot easier. But when they get it and get down in the grass, it's a lot better to haul the fish out with. So I don't think the lines cause me to miss the fish. I think it's just my reaction time and the way the fish are biting.
It's almost a safe bet that with these conditions, former Bass Angler of the Year Denny Brauer will be pitching a jig. It's his money bait. Denny's designed a new pro model jig for Strike King with a wide bend 5/0 hook. He's flipping wood cover. North Carolina pro Guy Aker is fishing in 20 feet of water, trying to catch bass that are holding 10 to 12 feet deep.
Now, I'm hoping these fish are going to gradually start coming back into the shoreline, the grass, the stumps, and the rocks. But you don't realize how big a shock it is. You know, the lake stays full all year long, then all of a sudden you drop it 3 foot. These fish are feeling like they're going to get trapped in shallow water in the creeks, and they back out and suspend. That's tough fishing, catching suspending fish. A lot of times you see people doodle out there on these points with little worms and stuff. But what I'm doing is taking a crankbait and getting out on the point and try to catch some of the suspending fish. And you can see the suspending fish out there on the points, and you also see the bait. In fact, some of the fish are above the bait fish. Usually your fish is below the bait fish.
Okay, Bassmasters, what do you do under these conditions? There's a lake drawdown, the fish are in shock, and there's a cold front headed our way. Listen to Chad Brauer's game plan.
I've seen several guys in the back of these creeks running so far this morning, throwing rattle traps and spinner baits and stuff like that, trying to chase those little fish. And I decided that really isn't my strength, so I decided to pick a bank that I thought looked good in practice and do what I do best, start fishing this jig along docks and some of this lay down wood, and really slow down and concentrate and try to get those 2 or 3 big fish to bite, because in this tournament 2 or 3 big fish are going to go a long ways. I think if you can catch 10 pounds a day in this one, you're going to end up real well. One of the reasons I picked this bank in particular is it looks a lot like some of the banks I fish at home on Lake the Ozarks. It drops almost right off the shore to about 4 or 5 feet, as opposed to the other side that just gradually winds down to about 5 feet, and all it is basically a mud bank with some scattered wood thrown out on it. And when you get on this side with that steep gradient, you've got some rocks left that aren't silted over, and that's just general good habitat for crawdads, and a jig's just a natural choice to fish around on that stuff. And when you put docks on it like this, it's just kind of an added bonus, just some bonus cover for them, and it's just picture perfect like it is at home.
Like father, like son. Chad's fishing his dad-designed pro model jig in a 3/8 ounce size for a slower fall in shallow water. Also, the lure features dual rattle chambers.
I don't even fish a jig anymore that doesn't have this double rattle on it. I'm just such a believer that if you can appeal to all 5 senses of the fish, that your odds of catching a fish go up immensely. Even if the fish, everybody says that bass are primarily sight feeders, and they are. But how many times, do you need 1 or 2 more bites during a day to make the difference in a tournament? And those 1 or 2 bites may come from them hearing a bait and it getting their attention, or putting a little bit of reel crawl or something on it, some kind of scent, and they smell it and it gets their attention and they start looking for a bait. Anytime you can, improve your number of bites by doing something like that, it's going to help your tournament performance every time.
Under normal water level conditions, Old Hickory Lake covers 22,500 acres with 440 miles of shoreline. During the Corps of Engineers Fall Drawdown Program, the lake shrinks. This can be an advantage or a problem for anglers. Texas pro Alton Jones sees the positive side. He's the only Tennessee Top 100 contender to discover a path into this creek.
Fishing a classic fall pattern as far back in the creek as you can possibly get, and in practice, I idled in, hit the mud flat, and I idled 200 or 300 yards out onto the flat, and it looked like a dead end. And I saw most of the other boats that would do the same thing. They'd turn around, but I was just determined. I saw a rock bank a little further up, and it looked like it had some more water on it. And I worked about an hour to get back in there to it. And sure enough, there was 8 feet of water back here in the creek, and it's about a half-mile long. 3 of my biggest fish have come right here on this 50-yard stretch. I know there's some more fish in here. I spooked a big one yesterday that I haven't caught yet, so maybe I can get lucky and put it in front of her when she decides to feed. You know, that's the thing. You fish down these banks over and over and over and over, and you swear there's no fish left there. And then the 10th time through it that day, boom, there's a 4 or 5 pound fish. So you just keep at it, and persistence pays off.
If there's one pro who's made a living fishing the back end of the creek fall pattern, it's 4-time world champion Rick Clunn. Twice he won the Bassmasters Classic with this strategy. Our Bassmasters TV field reporter Tim Miller is following Rick.
Rick Clunn is fishing in the very back end of Barton's Creek. Now, one of Rick's favorite fall techniques is to take a small crankbait or a small spinnerbait and come in the very back end of a creek and catch these bass that are putting on the feed before the winter. This is a nothing-looking bank where Rick's hooked this fish. It's an old mud flat. Obviously, the cows use it to come out and get water, but the flat comes out and drops off into a creek channel, and right on the drop is a row of stumps. What Rick did is he brought his crankbait right along that stump row. Oh, Rick's got a good fish. Even though it was just an old mud flat bank anyway, this fish was holding in the stumps just adjacent to the creek channel drop. He's hooked a good bass. Oh, this one looks like about a 5-pounder.
Yesterday at the Day 1 weigh-in, Randy Blockett scored an impressive 5-bass limit, 19 pounds, 9 ounces. This Joplin, Missouri-based pro has over a 2-pound lead. Let's check the Jersey's activewear leaderboard. Jersey's the official knit apparel of the Bass Angler Sportsman Society. Randy Blockett's strategy is different, a departure from the pros fishing down lake, as Bassmasters reporter Tim Miller explains.
This pattern that Randy Blockett is fishing is a typical fall pattern. He's taking about a 20-mile stretch of the Cumberland River, but he's starting 50 miles from the Old Hickory Dam, so he's running a long way. He's concentrating on wood cover, mostly treetops, and he's finding the thickest cover he can. That's where he's pitching his rattleback jig and his Lucky Strike Creature.
I've been rotating between a half-ounce rattleback jig with the Biffle Mega Craw in the real thick cover, and I've been taking in the more sparse cover this Pumpkin Seed Lucky Strike Creature. It's like a soft plastic twin tail. And it seems like in the more sparse cover, you need to finesse them out a little bit more. When I'm getting to the real thick brush piles, I'm flipping that big half-ounce rattleback jig and the Mega Claw into it, and I'm fishing the Creature around the more sparse logs and stuff. But this is really a good flipping type of day, you know, post front, you know, puts them tight to cover. You know, it looks like it's going to be clearing off. We got a north wind. It's usually the best way to catch them, you know, under these conditions.
Down Old Hickory Lake in Cedar Creek, Chad Brauer is also catching bass, and he's nipping at Randy Blockett's heels.
The pattern I'm using fishing these docks is about as good a pattern as you can use under these conditions. The fish tend to like to get into the shade under these real bright skies. And flipping and pitching is really regarded as one of the top techniques for post-cold front weather, and that's really what I'm doing under just a little bit of different circumstances. I'm fishing on dock instead of the typical wood pattern.
Randy Blockett said that was his best tree in practice. He caught an 8-pounder off of it. Well, this fish is a little less than that, but it gives him 3 bass in the live well now for about 4 pounds.
My pattern that I'm using is pitching a pro model jig up underneath there as far as I can get it up into the shade. And when you can slow down and do that, you know, your chances of catching them under these conditions go up.
Is Denny's kid on the winning pattern? We'll find out. The Bassmasters will be right back.
In third place, Chad Brauer from Missouri, 13 pounds, 14 ounces. He has 5 bass today, folks. Watch him. This young man is a comer. He's a Denny Brauer's son, and everything he knows he learned from me and his father. And you see why, folks. 16 pounds and 12 ounces. Boom! Listen, is that good or not? Huh? Listen, I am so proud of you. Listen, I remember when this guy was a wormy little kid about this big. His dad's fishing with us. Now he's beating the devil out of his old man.
It doesn't happen very often. He's been whipping me pretty good this fall, so I owe him one.
After today, the nickname Denny's Kid is out of character. Young Chad Brauer is full grown. He leads the Jersey's Activewear Day 2 leaderboard with 30 pounds, 10 ounces. Randy Blockett slips to second with 29 pounds, 12 ounces, followed by Alton Jones, Michigan's Chuck Economou, and Toshi Namiki of Japan. But there's one round left to fish.
That's usually the second and third days are usually the toughest after a cold front when you get your clearing skies and your winds dying down. And that'll probably play into my favor. I think everybody else will be hurt, and my fishing may stay the same, and I'm pretty sure I can get a few bites. I just hope it's enough.
During tournament competition, the Brauer clan gathers each night to compare strategy. What, if any, advice did Denny offer Chad for today?
He just told me to stick with what I was doing and just to fish slow again, not to get in too big a hurry and don't get too excited. You know, it's all you can ask in a tournament is to put yourself in position where you have a chance to win, and then the last day go fish as hard as you can, and what happens, happens.
Besides a slow, thorough jig fishing presentation, is there a key to Chad's technique along these docks?
They're biting very lightly. The two I have so far have just kind of, it felt like there was a leaf on the end. And I'm sure you guys have noticed I've set the hook a few times where there wasn't anything, and that's the exact same feel. You get a little stick or a little leaf on there, that feels the same as the fish, and my opinion is that if you have something that you think might be a fish, you better set the hook, because it's better to look like a fool than to be one and miss a fish.
Well, Chad Brauer's no fool. Before he joined the Bassmaster Tournament Trail, his folks insisted on college. He earned a degree in wildlife and fisheries science from the University of Missouri. Here at the Tennessee Top 100 final weigh-in, Chad hopes to graduate to the next level in professional bass fishing.
Yeah, I'm nervous, but he felt pretty confident he could go catch some fish, but he's got to have at least 10 for sure.
He's got to have 9 pounds and 1 ounce to take the lead and win this tournament. This is his one day of glory if he do it. I wish him well. Let's bring him up. I don't think he's going to make it. He's from Missouri. He's got one. He's leading this tournament. He was. Got to be 9 pounds and 1 ounce. Watch it. Watch the scale. 16 pounds, 13 ounces. Oh! Woo! There's your winner right there.
Chad Brauer, champion of the Bassmaster Tennessee Top 100. Since high school, he's had his sights set on being a pro angler, and he's made it to the top of the class with a winning weight of 47 pounds, 7 ounces. Rick Clunn ranks second, followed by Randy Blockett, Jay Yellis, and Alton Jones. In the amateur division, Greg Scott of Dearborn, Michigan wins a Ranger OMC-powered bass rig for the top weight, 17 pounds, 1 ounce. Right now, it's time for the Pros Pointer, the tournament champion's winning tip. Brought to you by Wrangler Rugged Wear. Gear for the outdoors.
When fishing a jig, I feel the most important thing you can do is to appeal to all 5 senses of the fish. The first and most important thing is the bass is a sight feeder, so you have to make him see the bait. That means you have to pick the correct color for the right water conditions. When I choose my color, I tend to go to my black and blue or my Texas craw for dirty water conditions, or my green pumpkin or my chameleon craw for clear water conditions. The second most important thing that I think that you can do to your jig to make yourself more successful is to add a rattle if one isn't already there. The jig that I fish, the Strike King Pro model, it comes equipped out of the package with a double rattle. No matter what jig I'm fishing, I always trim the weed guard back even with the hook. And no matter what particular jig I'm using, I always make sure I cover it with plenty of scent.
Chad Brauer, a great champion and a good kid. And it's true. Take a boy fishing, and he'll grow up to be a man. Next week, our Bassmasters cameras follow the tournament trail to Elberton, Georgia, the world's granite capital. We'll be covering the Georgia Top 100 on Richard B. Russell Lake. And you might know it, the bassin is as tough as granite.
Yeah.
For the Bassmasters, I'm Bob Cobb. See you all next week, right here on TNN Outdoors.
The Bassmasters has been brought to you by Johnson Outboards, the power of experience. Bass Pro Shops, world's largest supplier of premium tackle. Zebco Quantum, the top names in fishing. Ranger Boats, still building legends one at a time. Chevy Trucks, the most dependable, longest-lasting trucks on the road. Jersey's Activewear, the official licensed knit apparel of the Bass Angler Sportsman Society. Berkeley Trilene, America's #1 selling fishing line. Motor Guy, the choice of serious fishermen. Wrangler Rugged Wear, geared for the outdoors. And the Bass Angler Sportsman Society, the world's largest bass fishing organization.